You might be asking yourself, what is B-roll? Maybe you've heard other people talk about it, maybe you've seen it in an article or two, but B-roll is a nice fancy lingo we use for the B-roll, not the A-roll. So if you wanted to think of it like that, the A-roll would be your main content, your main objective. So oftentimes this is stuff like an interview or a voiceover. It's the content of the piece, the main points. So oftentimes in a documentary, let's say, you would interview somebody and they would have all these amazing sound bites, and you'd stitch them together with other interviews of other amazing sound bites, and you put that all together, and at the end of the day, you have a bunch of talking heads. Yes, it tells the story. Yes, it's the content you're trying to portray, but it's not that engaging. It's not that visually appealing. So that's where B-roll comes in. B-roll is the supplemental footage that represents or tells a nice story along with the A-roll type content. So your main core content, let's say they're talking about taking a walk in the park. It's one thing to listen to somebody talk about taking a walk in the park, but it's another thing to show people taking a walk in a park. So you would go film that person or other people walking in a park, and there'd be shots of them walking down a path. Maybe there's a dog, maybe there's trees, yada, yada, yada. You get the idea. It's the visual representation of the main core content, because you couldn't make a video of just B-roll, people walking in a park, and then all of a sudden they're swimming in a lake, and then all of a sudden they're in an office. It would be really disjointed and really confusing, because you would have no motivation for why you're going from one place to the next, and there wouldn't really be a story. It would just be moving images that look nice, and maybe there's some kind of inferred story that you could gather, but it really wouldn't tell you much. You would need some kind of voiceover or interviews or something to complement that. So you see it all the time in commercials, in not really TV shows. That's all kind of main stuff, but definitely in documentaries, testimonials, product overview videos, stuff like that, where they're talking about one thing, but then they want to show it. That's kind of the traditional explanation of what B-roll is. It's essentially just the visual extra fluff on top that makes the video look nice. Some people have a looser interpretation of B-roll than others. Some people have a stricter interpretation. It's just kind of a general term that gets thrown out there a lot. But essentially, it's just not the main stuff. It's usually not an interview. It's not someone talking to the camera with a teleprompter. It's all the stuff that shows the story rather than telling it. So if you wanted to think of it that way, that's probably a good, easy way to think about it, is the A-roll or your main content or whatever it is, that is what tells the story, but then the B-roll is what shows the story. And it doesn't have to be a literal one-to-one, like I said, they talk about taking a walk in the park. It doesn't actually have to be a walk in a park. It could be something else. Maybe someone's talking about their struggle with something, and you just show them sitting there thinking in deep thought or looking upset, whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be literal, but it usually needs to be related in some way. If it's totally unrelated, the audience might look at it and say, like, that was a little odd. Why did they use that when they were talking about walking in a park? They were showing a circus. That didn't really make sense, so you could get in situations like that. If you want, I would definitely recommend a video that came out quite a few years ago now, but basically saying we got that B-roll, talking about stock footage. It's a great video. I think you can find it online. I'll probably put a link to it down in the description, but check that out, because that definitely gives you a better idea of what B-roll actually is, and it's quite funny.